after that, so that he doesn't...
All right, interesting editorial cartoons there. It's time we exchange seats. We've been talking about, were you the one who was raising the issue of a National Cohesion and Integration Commission, right?
Yep.
Interesting. I don't know what you decide for on that particular interesting cartoon. It's time we exchange seats. Also, Ketrako was being flagged as one of a corporation that these two communities have largely been dominating. But that narrative is changing anyway, right? And also, on education, I found this very interesting, that for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. This is where maybe we can try and look at our curriculum. This is just off the beat of what we normally on the sidebar. So you have the monkey, we have the penguin dam, the elephant, we have the fish in a bowl, we have the seagull, and is that a hyena or a dog there? For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam, please climb that tree. So all this, they need to climb this tree. And it says here, our education system.
That's it.
And then Albert Einstein said, everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid.
That's true.
Right?
Yes.
That's what we've been subjecting our students to, the same curricula.
Well, I said,
and then we say we have the E-graders in this country.
Well, I spoke about this, I think it's my turn.
No, it's your turn.
Yeah, I spoke about this in many previous shows. And I used to call it Serikali ya Nyambura, Naya Kipchoge, and a little Abdullahi on the side there. The president was appointing his cousins from the backyard. If he's not appointing them as ministers, they were permanent secretaries. He's given the entire security apparatus in this country to one ethnic group. That is just bad governance, you know. The group happens to be my community, but Kenya is more important to my community. And I think this is the kind of nonsense that kind of gestation, the kind of terrible governance policies that they have been using there. As far as the cabinet is concerned, it's a fait accompli. He comes with his files, and all the people whom he brought through the yellow shirts just say, yes, sir, and Malala is there watching them. You know that fellow Malala, Secretary General? The guy who shouts a lot and says nothing. You know about him. So, you know, this government, at the end of the day, we have to be very brutally honest with our public ideas, because the country's at stake. We don't want to be scared. I was just reading last night a book by H.L. Mencken, who's an American essayist, who talks about how the state and the political class tries to scare the population with alarmist things so that they can go quiet. They'll say, oh, the country is going to explode, the country is going to die, the people are going to shoot each other. So you will come back to the safety of the political class. Well, unfortunately for the political class, they're sitting over there with this tribal government that the great Fanon heavily criticized as a national consciousness, as an issue of national consciousness, is that we've come to the end of it. 80% of the population, and grudgingly, the generations ahead of them are saying, let it be, because we know this thing is not working. And if it doesn't change these young people are going to take over the government by force. And we should be ready for that.
All right. And
let me start.
Is it Dr. Campbell?
It was Lehman.
Okay.
Well,
sequentially?
Yes, that's right.
That way.
All right.
It's okay.
That's it. All right. Okay.
It's me. It's okay. Kanyenji and I have no problem. We
are very well aware of that fact. Very aware of it. Don't think we're not aware.
Kanyenji and I are at ease with each other.
You are two poets.
Kindred spirits.
Yeah.
Now, I think we missed the point from the beginning, that it was not about the tribe, it was not about the region, it was not about the religion, it was not about your race, it was not about your gender, it was about merit. And because if you put the right person in the right place with the right spirit, it doesn't matter who comes before that person. But if to get a passport or to get an ID, you need a Kikuyu, so that you can be fast-tracked or whatever it is. If you need a loan in a bank, you need to have a Kikuyu there or a Kalenjin, then that is where the problem began. So our country from the beginning was cut out for merit. It is meritocracy that was to be the base. And there are two extremes here. One extreme is to try to ensure that we have the so-called face of Kenya in everything. That's one extreme. And we did it, and it was demonstrated to us the folly of that approach. We decided one time that we need to have a face of Kenya in football. I think we were going to Tripoli or someplace. And we went to Muranga. And other places.
For the national team.
And we put a face of Kenya on another team. By the first half, I think we had been pumped 12. By the first half of the goal.
We were walloped.
I think the game, we were playing God that the game ends. not that we win, because we had lost the whole idea of winning. Because that is the best face of Kenya I've ever seen demonstrated in our public space. No, we had every face, Kamau, Otieno, Abdullahi, Wafura. But it's a football we were playing, and we were not tapped into the best of our talent. So does it matter if it is Webuye that produces the best of our footballers and they fight for us as Kenya? Does it matter? So that's one extreme. The other extreme is political, where because of numbers, the people of Mount Kenya and the people of Rift Valley agree that to dominate politics in Kenya until Jesus and Muhammad decide to come back, if they do, or the end of the world. And they can do it because you just need to find a good working formula. You can either come, the two of you, and become partners and share the government, or you can ignite a revolution from below, but targeting the two communities. That's what Uhuru and Ruto have given us. That you manipulate ethnic majorities and then cobble a few, the warriors, you bring them on this side, and you
because they're neutral.
Yes, yeah. No, they're strategic.
No,
they say they're neutral.
We want to address that issue.
Those issues of extreme, that Kalenjins, and if you bring now the space of the
point is
Somali,
the Somalis are more strategic. They are more business oriented.
It's like saying, you have, you're not racist, but I have black friends, but I'm not racist.
But I'm coming on the notion of the fact that you said, we had the face of Kenya, and especially during the national government, the coalition government. During the Prime Minister, then Raila Odinga and Mwai Kibaki.
Yes.
This is where we had all this now, the neutral community.
The neutral community.
You are the neutral community.
Well, we're not neutral at all. I don't think
that was a perception then.
Not you.
No. I'm talking about the community.
But I'm saying the perception then was.
The perception we had.
The perception was, and it's this false premise that there is something a little bit different about these Somalis. They're not part of the main Bantu Nilotic groups here.
Yes.
They are Cushitic, they're a little different. They have a strange religion called Islam, second largest religion in the world.
They don't protest.
They're not more interested very much in politics. They're busy selling camel milk and those things. So whenever we fight over the resources of the state, if we call one of them, but this is a ridiculous, ahistorical concept in Kenyan politics. If there's anybody who's been political in this country, Somalis, highly political. Let me just give you two concrete examples. When the 1982 coup d'etat happened in Nairobi, the Somali soldiers by themselves, and made it, who just reversed it. And people say we became citizens then. There's a whole discourse about ethnicity in this country that maybe our historians have to start writing about, is that it is not true that this community is neutral or it's not neutral. The last election, they all voted for Raila Odinga. All of them. To a man, they were painted blue, except for a small dot of yellow in Garissa town. Okay, so these kinds of stereotypes is what these Gen Zs are fighting. If we put an end to these stereotypes, that this community thinks like that and that community thinks like that, we will be going to my senior learned friend's comments here about making not Donald Trump's idea, but Kenya back on its feet and make it great again.
Right.
So
I think it's an age
I'm
now.
not finished. No.
Oh, you're not finished, Robert.
He has,
No, you have to finish.
No, he had yielded my time. You give him the time. Okay.
Okay.
So in other words, what we are saying is that we need to base our country more on merit than the counting of the tribes. One extreme is where you want to force the face of Kenya. The other extreme is where you do ethnic calculations and ensure if you have the Luo in the government, you have the Kikuyu in the government, and you have the Kalenjin in the government,
47
you
counties.
will rule until cows come home. So those are the two extremes. What the Gen Zs are saying is that we need to have a tribalist nation. And when you see a girl lifting her fist, nobody cares whether she comes from Western Kenya, Central Kenya, or Garissa, or wherever she's coming from. Who cares? It is what the message that the young girl, the young lady is carrying. That's what is important. And then therefore, we need to go beyond the tribe. We need to go beyond these identities, and we only retain two identities. That one, we are Kenyans, and two, we are Pan-Africanists. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad the noise is calming down.
You have to protest.
You see, if we based our positions in government on merit, there'll be very, very little discussion with regard to tribes. A lot of us still talk about, we wish we had Michuki come back to fix, the transport sector.
A great minister.
Matiang'i is during his time, he did something with regard to education and there was no leakage. You see, no one is saying Matiang'i is a Kisi. No one is saying Michuki is a Kikuyu.
Maraga.
Or Maraga, and name it. And some of these great people, we actually miss them. Why? Because of their competence, because of meritocracy. Now, the difference between what ought to be and what is. The empirical, one of the underlying things that while Gen Z are saying they're tribalist, ethnicity has not been taken out of the Kenyan political playground, or how Kenyans feel and even perceive power. And the reason is because, as Professor said, if, for instance, it's only perhaps when your person is in a certain place that perhaps you may be guaranteed access to A, B, C, and D, then the way you're going to look at the world is going to be affected by that type of reality. One of the elephant in the room, and it's easy not to talk about it sometimes, just like if you're white in the United States and they say white is right, and you've grown up in white privilege, whether directly or indirectly, you may not understand sometimes the sentiments that are felt and experienced by a person of color. Now, the truth is that cartoon represents one of the elephants in the room. And there is a seething feeling and sentiment among Kenyans, especially who feel they've not been sufficiently represented, despite their qualifications, when they see someone being interviewed on an ambassador's job and who cannot actually say what GDP is.
It's a joke.
And they wonder, is this some kind of ethnic, tribal, elite pacting that means if our guy are not there, then we'll never actually have access? And so we also have to be honest, because there is what we hope for. What we hope for is meritocracy. What we are facing, it's not. And so within what we're facing, then how can we also be able to address that? Because either, if the revolution did not start from Gen Z, was going to be started now from that type of feeling of alienation of 60 years of independence, of some communities who may never have come close even to power, and who no longer recognize their token representatives as actually speaking for them. That is part of what has informed the Tawe movement in much of Western Kenya and parts of the Rift Valley. It's an uprising that had already started Now Gen Z are simply accelerating this because those in power no longer are seen as representing the interests of the people. So whether they're their communities or their constituencies. And it's something we cannot exactly wish away if we have to be honest with ourselves, because for us to move ahead, we don't have to tell each other what we want to hear. We need to tell each other what we need to know as a country.
Right. And just an addition before I come to you, Ken Mbongi. This writing was on the wall because even when they started the strike, the doctors, they had actually highlighted that 7 doctors had died by suicide in the last 2 years. This is according to KMPDU. And they said that 7 doctors died by suicide in the last 2 years alone, linked to suicide cases to depression. And the Union Secretary General Baden Davji Atela said that he revealed that some of the doctors are frustrated after waiting for too long to secure employment. The Union Secretary General Davji said that at least 4,000 doctors are currently unemployed despite the country facing shortage. And we can see the agitation with the interns as we're talking right now. It reminds me that even during that same period, I think it was in 2023, one of the publications, I think it was People Daily, had highlighted about a young girl who had graduated from Masinde Muliro University with a degree in biotechnology. And after making over 500 applications, she never ever secured, or even a reply to those applications of regrets. She never got it. Only one morning for her mom to wake up, going to the bathroom to find that Vera, I can't remember the other name, she had hanged herself. And she'd said, left a note there that, you know, for 5 good years, I've been seeking for employment and nothing has really come forth. So what is the idea, the rhyme and reason for me to go to school, to graduate even? And then I don't even get a regret, just to even give me hope. And the word was mentioned here, you know, they always say hope deferred makes the heart sick. Professor.
Thank you very much, Debal. Very depressing situation to listen to. But there are many cases of that kind that we never get to hear about, of people who are thoroughly depressed and have no hope in this country, partially because of sheer discrimination based on ethnicity, based on gender, based on generation, based on race, and sometimes based on creed. I remember, I think it's 1 year ago, I presented a paper in one of our seminars which I had entitled The Unholy Trinity, trying to look at the intersections between violence, identity, and elections. And the one thing that was very clear in that presentation, it is in YouTube, if anybody who wants to listen to that, is that part of the challenge we face in our electoral process is actually ethnic discrimination, which is perpetrated in certain parts of this country that has defranchised many people in very, very fundamental ways. And that is what I think the Gen Zs are trying to rise against. That can we create a country where meritocracy is really what matters? Because essentially that's why we go to school, that's why we get training, that's why we look for opportunities. But then, Dibal, and I concur with what Hassan was saying earlier, that we should not lose sight of the fact that for far too long, our country has lived on discrimination and the marginalization of certain groups of people, naturally. And we have had a history where your first letter of your surname, woe unto you if you have an O like me. You go somewhere, people are not quite sure where you belong, and they pigeonhole you into sometimes where you don't belong. You either lose or get. And that is cutting across all our institutions, whether you're talking about ministries, you're talking about government departments, you're talking about institutions, even in our own universities. Professor Kawanja, you are here. My brother here, who happened to be my student at some point, you know, the problems of ethnicity in our universities, which we need not to run away from. As I speak, you have departments in some of our public universities that have academic staff from one single community. Remember, Professor God is the one who taught us not to use the word tribe because of the pejorative connotations that come with it. Instead, they favored ethnic community. So how do we solve that? Then we have actually to come out and say, if we are doing affirmative action, it has to be done in such a way that it's not sabotaged and that it is not done in the way of ethnic balancing, which does not serve its purpose, other than making us feel small as a country, and the world looks at us as just a bunch of ethnic zealots. Professor Kawanja talked about ethnic balancing in football and took me back to the late 80s and early 90s when I could simply let give my life for the Harambee Stars of the time. And who were the players? Morila, Controller, Masiga, Cheche, Otieno Pasanga, Bob Piogola, Peter Dow. And I look back to the team that we could die for. I come from the Highlands, and Shapana was, but who made Shapana what it is, or what it was at the time? Michael Cott in the goalkeeper, Sam Brook, you know, Chirichir, Sylvester Mageni, who did not come from that part of the world, but they could actually play and make Shabana great at the time.
Thank you.
What I look forward to, and I guess this is what our young people are saying, it is a country where, to use the words of Martin Luther King Jr., I'll be judged by the content of my character, but not the first letter of my surname.
Indeed, indeed. All right, let's just shift gears because I can see we have remaining with a few minutes, and we talk about also what is happening around the region so far. It began, as you talked, from the north. It's been coming down to the East African region.
Yes, that's been the case.
Yeah, let me just set the tone before we continue. Where the military regimes of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso marked their divorce from the rest of West Africa on Saturday, that is July the 6th, as they signed a treaty setting up confederation between them. The first summit of the three countries who all pulled out of the economic community of West African states earlier this year also saw calls for greater cooperation across a wide range of sectors. Our people have irrevocably turned their backs on ECOWAS. Niger's ruling general Abdul Rahmane Tiani told his fellow Sahel strongmen at the gatherings opening in the Nigerian capital, Niamey. The three leaders who took power through coups in recent years decided to take a step further towards greater integration and adopted a treaty establishing a confederation. They said in a statement issued at the end of the summit. The Confederation of Sahel States, which will use the acronym AES and be headed by Mali in its first year, will group some 72 million people. Their ECOWAS exit were fueled in parts by accusation that Paris was manipulating the bloc and not providing enough support for anti-jihadist efforts. The exit came as the trio shifted away from formed colonial ruler, or the former colonial ruler France, with Tiani calling for the new bloc to become a community far removed from the stronghold or the stranglehold of foreign powers. Now, the economic community of West African state that now is ECOWAS said it was disappointed with the lack of progress in reconciling with breakaway junta-led Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger as we've already established, and will make more vigorous reconciliation efforts. ECOWAS Commission President Omar Toure said at the start of a summit in the Nigerian capital, as we've just established, that is Abuja, the region risks disintegration and worsening insecurity after the three alliance of Sahel states signed a Confederation treaty. Their departure could weaken ECOWAS, Toure said, and also the freedom of the movement and a common market of 400 million people offered by the bloc were under threat. ECOWAS re-elected Nigerian President Bola Tinubu chairman for another year and tasked Senegalese and Togolese leaders to negotiate with the juntas to try to bring them back to the bloc. The ECOWAS leaders approved a decision to mobilize a 5,000-strong regional standby counter-terrorism force. The force will start as a 1,650-man brigade to be increased over time. All right, let's just begin from there with a coup.
It has been the history of this program that I've spoken about this. We predicted the coup d'etat before it happened. You remember that?
Beginning with Zimbabwe.
The whole thing.
On the other side of the track?
On the other side of the track, we predicted Mugabe was going to go. And I remember when I came into the place a few weeks later and Mugabe was overthrown, everybody was holding my hand as if I was a witch doctor. This is just political economy, Debal. We predicted all these things. We predicted it's going to come down here. And it is now with us. Now, Debal, you know, the thing about it is, there is a concept today in economics, Debal, which is the banner of the economic team here in Kenya as well. It's called a disciplinary neoliberal economics, Debal. This is the finance capital has taken over public policy. The stockbrokers are the ones dealing with the educational policy. It is killing what is the state, the role of the state in post-colonial Africa. About the problem of the African continent is the state and the market. And what analysis that is now coming out is that the problem of being a resource basket case is connected to the overall idea of an overarching empire in this country, in this world today, as far as politics is concerned. And about the people of this continent are reacting to the exploitation of their societies, internally and from without. And they are saying, we're not communists, we're not socialists, we're not none of those things that they try to brand people with. What they want is to participate in the prosperity of their countries, so that their exploitation is not taken over by foreign multinational companies. Debal, we know that the biggest problem in Kenya today is the American ambassador. Debal, have you seen the American ambassador? Not Walt Whitman. Meg Whitman. She took off, Debal, and I think allegedly went to the U.S. after taking our guy to the U.S. and giving him all these neoliberal prescriptions. And what happened? When they came back here, that explosion, Debal, happened. Debal, I put it to you that the Sahel is going to go through more convulsions. The military took over to protect the economic and political identity of their nation states. Debal, if the political leaders of our country here in Kenya do not solve our political problems, guess, Debal, what the people in the barracks are going to do? You know, they're sworn to defend the Constitution. You know that, Debal? When they went, the military was sworn to defend our Constitution and from enemies from within and without. Now, if our civilian people do not know how to solve the problems of, they could precipitate a coup d'etat in this country so that order is restored. Debal, I put it to you that we must change our economic models more towards integration of East Africa, less than this single export unilateral neoliberal policies of the IMF that Mr. Ruto has followed, which is a disaster to this continent, Debal, because it kills healthcare, kills education, kills social infrastructure, and kills the very idea of citizenship in our country. Because, Debal, we're paying debts. The Auditor General today says she cannot account for 1 trillion shillings in debt, Debal. It's in the newspapers today. 1 trillion. Now, exactly what debt does the government of this country want the people of this country to pay when it cannot account for 1 trillion in debts that have been paid, that they've taken as taxpayers?
No projects to show.
Projects to show, but that's theft. It's just theft. Well, they're using projects to show, but it's theft. The money stayed in Europe. It did not come here. It just changed from the accounts. So the reaction of the population of Kenya is not that they don't want to pay taxes. No, they want to pay taxes. But when they pay the taxes, they want to see those taxes working for them. This is a very important thing. And this is what was happening in the Sahel. The French were coming. They were taking their gold. They were taking their minerals and paying them 6% of the value. And they placed a political leadership there that allowed this to happen. Who the hell are you to tell those people that their coup d'etat was illegal? Who? Who? You have no moral authority at all because you have stolen from these people and exploited them. And you are using liberal democracy as a cover for your theft. The French Republic has the largest amount of gold in Europe. It does not have gold in France. They have cheese, Debal. They don't have gold. It comes from West Africa. It's a fact, Debal. This is not a game we're playing. At the end of the day, Debal, all of us as Africans and people of goodwill, we are not anti-Europe, we're not anti-America, we're not anti all those things. We said we want to share in our own prosperity in partnerships that are viable, that makes these countries work. And that is what the Gen Zs are saying. And I think it is very important for the American ambassador, Meg Whitman, who has been very silent in the last month, very silent, to say something about what is going on in this country, because she's the one who took our president to Joe Biden and brought all this trouble to this country.
All right, that's according to Hashi. Let's hear from...
Well, the point is, at one point or another in our history, the American government has been interventionistic. Whether you are talking about William Atwood in the 1960s, or Smith Hempstone in the 1990s, or now Meg... What did you call
Whitman.
yeah.
Meg Whitman.
Meg?
Whitman.
Oh, okay.
And you pretend not to know the name.
No, it's okay.
I like that.
The much I know is that she has been better than any other foreign minister we've ever had in this country. That's what I know. I cannot wish for more.
Last time I said she is Kenya's ambassador to the US.
No. I think she's more than that. She's the best minister foreign minister we've ever had.
She should be in cabinet
since independence. Yes.
Aisha for is looming.
Yeah.
Well, I can call for the support of everybody except Meg. Now, the point is this. In West Africa, it's very sad. The French, truth be told, did not decolonize their countries. And the two also that tried that, like Guinea-Conakry, when Sékou Touré tried to get the kind of independence that Ghana had. The French went in and ripped everything. Railways, telephone lines, and so on. The story is told, I think it's maybe with some exaggeration, that even French ladies went for the gifts they had given their, black ladies, irrespective. So the point is that for the last over 60 years, the French world has not been free. And a joke was made in social media, very, very hilarious, that this man is answering questions from a journalist, and he's asked that what is Guinea's, this is Niger's main product, and it's uranium, and it's what is the French's main product, Niger. So in other words, you've colonized Niger, and then you can take their uranium. So the point is that the coups in the Sahel are good coups, and not just coups, but moral coups, because they are asserting the dignity of the African people and our right to our resources. That does not mean that we cannot trade with France. That does not mean we cannot have cooperation with France, but that cooperation be moral. Not where Niger is in darkness and France
is a light.
Is a light 24 hours. So that's the point. Second, the coups in West Africa and what Dibalo have mentioned about the rethinking of membership in ECOWAS by the main countries in West Africa, particularly the Francophone belt in the Sahel, is an indictment to our regionalism. And we've been saying the same ourselves about the African Union. The African Union has become an extension of French foreign policy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they control the Peace and Security Council for the last, since the African Union was created in 2004.
Yeah.
They have controlled that, of course, through Algeria
That's why
and
they
so on.
fought Gaddafi.
Yeah, that's why Gaddafi was a mortal enemy to the West, because Gaddafi was underwriting the radical opinion within the African Union. Second, they have ensured at least that the person who is at the helm of the African Union is a Francophone. Doesn't matter from which. And Mina had great difficulties getting there because of, that was one factor among many. You know, that
even Djibouti voted against her. Can you imagine that?
For Dlamini Zuma to be the chair, it took 2 rounds.
Yes.
And the turn of Jinping from Gabon had to be extended by 6 months.
Exactly.
And it took South Africa and its muscle
to
get
push them out.
To be there. Meaning the French are not enabling us to have equitable distribution of the seats of the African Union. And that is where we led this to this resolution that the next chair must come from the East African region. But even then, it is most likely
Raila will fail.
It is most likely to be a Francophone. Djibouti.
Raila is not going to win that thing. I predicted this. You remember a year ago.
So that's why he's warming up to the government.
Government
of national unity.
No, it's national Nusumkate.
So anyway,
and Ruto said there will be no Nusumkate.
No, the Nusumkate can come in many forms. And Uhuru Kenyatta, it came at a position in government and positions in government and a seat in the African Union and a seat in IGAD for Kalonzo. So the two were rewarded that way. In the Nusumkate now was coming as the AU seat plus the share of positions in the government. So it is, if it quacks and walks like a duck, swims like a duck, it's a duck.
Yep. All right. Do we have a duck here?
Let's so you know whether I talk or not.
Round duck.
No, we have a cockroach.
That is hate speech. That is hate speech.
Withdrawn.
Radio may have to call NCIC.
That
completely. First of all, there's something that took place in West Africa. Now, ECOWAS want to keep it, on ECOWAS, expressed frustration because of the inability to be able to convince the 3 countries, to get back. First of all, ECOWAS made a fundamental mistake by, first of all, imposing sanctions. Imposing sanctions at a time when it was very apparent there was a Gen Z revolution in West Africa. That people on the ground were saying, we don't want this, to the extent where they were thinking about mobilizing forces to invade those countries. Now, Tinubu to be re-elected as chair again, is he still alive? Now, the trouble is, Tinubu himself lacks popular legitimacy in Nigeria because of the small number with which he won his votes. If it were not a 3-way race, for instance, he would have lost.
He would lost to Peter.
Not to mention, there were 90 million registered voters, and I think probably got less than 10 million, out of that. So that is really, in terms of popular legitimacy, is extremely low. And so I don't see that train going back. I think the train has left the ship. And ECOWAS and West Africa need to find different ways of being able to now create something that is actually going perhaps to be more attractive, to be able to bring those people back. Otherwise, the leaders, the street have left the leaders in West Africa. Now, in East Africa, what lessons are we going to learn from that? Number 2, this is not just happening in West Africa. Prof has spoken about France. Well, the French Gen Z, most of them who turned in large numbers this week, literally demonstrated repudiation to the center-right, Macron's party, and the far-right, and it looks like those people are going home. And it's going to be new thinking by Gen Z in power in France. So there is a wind of change going on around the world that we need to pay attention to. It started in Africa, in West Africa, is moving now down east as well as south. And in Europe and the United States, it's been going on. Today, as we speak, in the November election, there is all indications that Joe Biden may not come back. That is, if we'll still be alive. Okay, he may not come back to office. And a lot of it had to do with the revolution that was initiated by young people, especially in the wake of massive human rights atrocities in Gaza. And Joe Biden may be sunk, not just by his inability to debate, because even if he debated well, that Gen Z were going to sink him, or to sink him because of Gaza. That was his Waterloo. Now, it does not help that the Democratic Party today is as divided almost as it was in 1980.
Thank you.
And you know the outcome, how it was.
Fantastic. All right, let's hear from Ken briefly as well.
Deepal, I concur with the sentiments expressed by my colleagues. And hasten to add that the death of ECOWAS is actually self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted.
Yeah, because ECOWAS fell victim of our notions of regionalism. If it is in the EAC region, Kenya is the big brother. If it is in the ECOWAS region, Nigeria is the big brother. And they started bullying the small partners within the region and supported very unpopular leaders who kowtowed to France, if you are talking about the Sahel region. And that is why these countries are actually moving out, because the citizens, the everyday people of these countries, whether you're talking about Chad, Mali, or Côte d'Ivoire, they were very dissatisfied with their leaders because they were selling the country literally to France and its Western allies. When the people rose against that, ECOWAS came in under the patronage of Nigeria to suppress popular dissent. So its death was expected to come, and I'm not surprised that the countries are moving out. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, are the military leaders going to be the alternative? Any student of history will tell you no. Because we have seen this before. The men and the women in uniform,
it didn't work.
Men on horsebacks, as Ruth first described them, are not trained to govern. They are actually trained to kill. Right? If anything, they will create a little bit of more chaos. Now there might be some semblance of peace and stability, because people have no alternative. Given a choice between, the devil and a sinner, you might want to take the sinner because it's not a devil.
Thank you.
Yeah, but the point is, as I finish, is that my view will be let the men and women in uniform remain in the barracks. In the barracks.
Yeah,
when they come to the palace,
unless they're going to save the country.
Unless they come to the when they come to the palace, they will never leave.
Thank you. Let's leave it at that. And of course, I just wanted to show you also what is in The Economist as we're winding up. My director Madeka is on me. And this is what is on the latest copy of The Economist. No way to run a country, as Anenja was talking about, the US and Biden. No way to run a country is what is the splash on the front page of The Economist. President of the United States of America, you can see that is the insignia there.
He's finished.
And imagining war in Lebanon, you can actually grab it. The week, a match point finally. Starmer prepares for victory. Of course, he's garnered it right now as we know it. And this is also the new shift that we have finally led the Labour Party after a long hiatus, so to speak. They've garnered it. I was reading an article by Tony Blair. I just want to wind up with this and then and he says that winning power, let me just try and highlight that, very important. He says winning power is all about being the great persuader. Exercising power is all about being the great chief executive. The former role consists of speeches, symbolic moments of connection,
Gramsci.
and just and what else? Slogans, kissing babies, wooing voters, and all the performative art of good campaign. The latter role is about intellectual. He says here, the latter role is about intellectual and practical graft policy and delivery. Guess which is harder?
Can somebody send that to the president?
Can you send it to us?
I sent this particular article
Yes,
from Tony Blair. Yes, I will. I'll forward it.
Please.
I'll forward it to you.
Please,
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Deba.
Let's leave it at that. Next time I'll give you the chance to give some closing remarks.
Max.
My director is saying time's up.
You can let me only give the closing.
No, not to you. But I want to thank you for your valued company. I can see Kanyenji wants to say something.
No.
I want, on a lighter note.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
You know, if the military are trained to kill, at least they can only kill some. Our politicians are
Killing everybody.
to steal from everybody.
Killing them slowly.
I think it's Nikita Khrushchev who said that politicians are all the same everywhere. Yeah, they promise to build bridges even where there is no water. There is no river.
And they water flowers when it is raining.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Deba.